You think your 20 years of experience make you an expert. They don't. They make you a machine, a finely tuned instrument that sees only what it's been programmed to see and nothing else. You see the pattern, you confirm the pattern, you move on. Every day, every week, every year, you are reinforcing the code, strengthening the walls of your own perception until you can't even see the bricks anymore. You call it instinct, you call it a gut feeling. It's not. It's a filter that gets thicker with every success, with every correct diagnosis, with every case closed. It's a filter that catches the obvious and lets the truth slip right through. Experience doesn't make you sharper, it makes you comfortable. And in my line of work, comfort is the precursor to catastrophe. It's the quiet hum right before the system fails. My name is Dr. William Schenck. For 31 years, I was the chief medical examiner for Cuyahoga County. I've signed my name to over 8,000 death certificates, each one a final declarative statement. My father was a pathologist, my mother a surgical nurse. In our house, the body was a system, and death was a malfunction, a problem to be solved with evidence. That room was my office for 3 decades. Before I tell you about the one day that redefined all of them, I'm curious. How many years have you been in your line of work? Just drop the number. It was a life of conclusions, of neat lines and filed reports. The only part of that life that remains is my daughter, Christine. Every Tuesday, 7 p.m., the phone rings. A single consistent data point in a career that taught me all my other conclusions were built on sand. I inherited my father's tools and my mother's pragmatism. For me, the morgue was never a place of endings. It was a laboratory of final answers. Down there, under the sterile hum of the fluorescent lights, the chaos of a human life stopped making noise. It fell silent. What remained was pure physical data, the subtle petechial hemorrhaging in the eyes, the specific gravity of the fluid in the lungs, the faint trace of an unmetabolized drug in the liver tissue. These were not tragedies, they were facts. My job was to assemble those facts into a coherent narrative, to write the last irrefutable chapter for the record. For 23 years, that's precisely what I did. I built a career on certainty, a reputation on being the man who could make the dead speak clearly, without ambiguity. I was wrong. I wasn't a translator. I was just a very confident editor, cutting out the parts of the story that didn't fit my conclusion. You handle 3, sometimes 4 bodies a day, and the days turn into decades. The process becomes instinct, a sequence burned into your hands. Why incision? Organ removal and weighing. Tissue samples for histology. The sequence is a rhythm, a familiar piece of music that you stop consciously hearing after a while. You're no longer seeing the unique geography of the body in front of you. You're seeing the 1,000 bodies that came before it. You see the classic signs of acute myocardial infarction, and your mind locks onto that diagnosis because it has confirmed it 10,000 times. It's efficient. It's how you survive a job like that without going mad. But that efficiency is a blade that cuts both ways. It allows you to process the immense weight of the work, but it also shaves away the details that don't fit the established pattern, the anomalies, the quiet whispers of a different story, the things you can only see when you're truly looking for them, not just confirming what you already expect to find. It was March of 1998. The body arrived tagged as John Doe 98-142, a 62-year-old male discovered in his apartment, clean scene, no apparent trauma, just another Tuesday. The air in the morgue carried its usual sterile bite, a sharp chemical tang of disinfectant that never quite masked the low, sweet undertone of decay. It's a smell that seeps into the fabric of your lab coat, into the pores of your skin. The body was cold on the stainless steel table, a profound, dense cold that you feel through 2 layers of latex gloves. He lay under the full, shadowless glare of the overhead surgical lamps, a bank of fluorescent tubes designed to bleach out any ambiguity. The room was a sealed environment of tile and steel, built for the singular purpose of revealing truth. It was a routine case, the kind you handle on instinct, the kind that builds the filter thicker. I made the standard Y incision, the number 10 scalpel blade parting the skin of the torso with a soft, wet tearing sound that you stop hearing after the first few years. The ribs were clipped with the bone shears, each cut a sharp, percussive crack that echoed slightly off the tiled walls. I lifted the chest plate. Inside, the man's body told the exact story his medical history had predicted. His heart was enlarged, the muscle pale and flabby, a textbook example of cardiomegaly. The coronary arteries felt like hardened tubes under my fingers, constricted with atherosclerotic plaque. His lungs were heavy, waterlogged with the pink, frothy fluid of congestive failure. It's a process. You remove, you weigh, you section, you observe. Every organ was singing the same familiar chorus of a system that had simply worn out and given up. The conclusion was writing itself. I dictated my findings into the small microphone that hung over the table, my voice flat and certain, a recitation of clinical facts. Cause of death, acute myocardial infarction secondary to severe coronary artery disease. Manner of death, natural. The words felt solid, supported by the overwhelming physical evidence laid out on the steel tray beside me. After the organs were returned and the body was sutured closed with heavy wax thread, the final piece of the process began, the paperwork. I filled out the death certificate, the pen scratching against the thick official paper. It's a document meant to be permanent, a final declarative statement. I signed my name at the bottom, a definitive stroke, case closed. The new protocols required supplemental angled light photography for the training archives, a formality I had the junior tech handle as I washed up. Under the direct, unblinking glare of the main lamps, the job was done. There was nothing more to see. 2 days passed. The paperwork for John Doe 98-142 was filed. The toxicology report came back clean, confirming my findings. The case was a closed data set, archived and complete. I was in my office reviewing the preliminary reports for the day's intake when a knock came at the door. It was the new kid, Peterson. 8 months on the job, still had that look of perpetual low-grade anxiety. He stood in the doorway holding an 8x10 glossy print like it was a fragile piece of evidence, which I suppose it was. He didn't say a word, just stepped forward and placed it on my desk, on top of the open files. "Sir," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "from the supplemental series." He didn't accuse, he didn't question. He just pointed a single hesitant finger at a spot on the photograph. I picked up the print. The raking light from the camera's flash had carved the skin's texture into stark relief, a landscape of pores and fine hairs. And there it was, a faint, almost imperceptible series of parallel lines embedded in the epidermis at the base of the skull. It wasn't a crease from the body bag, it wasn't an artifact of lividity, it was a patterned abrasion, geometric, a texture transferred through immense focused pressure, the kind of detail the flat, shadowless glare of my examination lamps was designed to erase. The protocol. The new protocol for angled photography that I'd treated as a bureaucratic checkbox, a redundant step. I could feel the hum of the fluorescent light above my desk, a sound I hadn't noticed in 20 years. In that silence, I saw it all. He didn't know what to ignore. I placed the photograph back on the desk. I didn't look at Peterson. I didn't have to. The system had failed, and I was the system. I picked up the heavy receiver of my desk phone, the coiled cord stretching tight. I dialed the lead detective's direct line. There was no preamble. "McTaggart," I said. "Schenk, pull the file on my John Doe from Tuesday, the 62-year-old from the West Side." I paused, letting the silence hang. My finding was incorrect. The manner of death is not natural, it's a homicide. I hung up the phone. The click of the receiver settling into its cradle was the loudest sound in the world. The death certificate I had signed with such certainty 2 days before was no longer a final statement. It was a mistake, a permanent public record of the moment my experience had made me blind. That night, and for 63 nights that followed, I stayed late. My office became a mausoleum of my own work, a library of my own conclusions. I didn't open a formal inquiry. This wasn't for the record, this was a private excavation. I pulled the archive boxes one by one, starting with 1997 and working my way back through the years. The file smelled of brittle paper and time, a dry, dusty scent of finality. Under the single cone of light from my desk lamp, I'd read my own precise, confident handwriting, my own definitive statements. I was searching for the signature of my own complacency, the faint fingerprint of a detail missed, a question unasked. I was hunting for ghosts. I found none. Not a single case file yielded a clear, demonstrable error, and that was the true catastrophe. The search produced no evidence, which in turn destroyed my faith in the very concept of evidence itself. It left only a void. The homicide of John Doe 98-142 no longer keeps me awake. I can see the mechanics of that failure. I can trace the cause and effect. It's a closed system. What wakes me now in the 3 a.m. silence of my apartment are the other names. The thousands of names on the certificates I signed in 1992, in 1985, in 1978. The ones where there was no rookie with an angled flash, no photograph to catch the subtle texture of a truth I was too experienced to see. I lie there and I see their faces, or rather the absence of their faces, just a name on a line followed by my own signature. Every Tuesday, Christine calls. That is the only data point I still trust. For the rest, for the 31 years of my life's work, the past is no longer a record. It is an open question, and there is no one left alive to answer it. That photograph wasn't a piece of evidence. It was a mirror. In that instant, looking at those faint geometric lines, I didn't just see a clue I had missed. I saw the entire architecture of my own perception fail in real time. A catastrophic system shutdown. For 30 years, my brain had been optimized for one thing: pattern recognition. It saw the signs of cardiac failure, and with the cold efficiency of a perfect machine, it shut down all other lines of inquiry. It saw what it was programmed to see. The rookie, Peterson, he had no programming. He had no 30 years of patterns to filter the world through. He only had a checklist and a pair of eyes. He didn't know what he was supposed to ignore, so he saw everything. My expertise wasn't defeated by a sharper mind. It was defeated by a clean slate. The quiet confidence that had been the engine of my career, the very thing that allowed me to sign my name with such finality, it just stopped. It was replaced by something else, a cold, constant, and necessary state of self-doubt. I realized then that true expertise isn't a destination you arrive at. It's not a library of answers you accumulate. It's a process. It is the discipline of continuously questioning what you believe to be true. It's the act of looking for the evidence that proves you wrong, not the evidence that proves you right. Have you ever felt that? That moment when a belief you've held for years just shatters in an instant. A simple yes or no is all I need. Because in that moment, my past was no longer a record of my work. It became a field of unanswered questions, and I was standing in the middle of it, completely alone. You walk through your day like I walk through my morgue. You see a problem, you recognize the familiar signs, and you make a diagnosis on the spot. You call it a gut feeling. You call it experience. I call it a premature conclusion. You are performing a field autopsy on every interaction, every decision, every piece of information that crosses your desk. You see the obvious pathology, the budget shortfall, the difficult employee, the market shift, and you immediately draft the report in your head. Cause of failure, established. You don't collect all the evidence. You collect just enough evidence to confirm your initial hypothesis. The rest is discarded as irrelevant, as a post-mortem artifact. You've built a career on the efficiency of your conclusions, but you've forgotten that the purpose of an examination is not to be fast. It is to be right. I have seen where that path leads. I have stood over the result. It ends with you signing your name to a lie, not out of malice, but out of habit. That certainty you feel, that clean, efficient confidence, that is the primary contaminant in any investigation. It clouds the lens. It alters the tissue samples. It makes you blind to the faint mark under the raking light, the one piece of data that unravels your entire narrative. When you declare a cause of death too soon, you don't just close a file. You bury the truth along with the body. You create a permanent public record of your own blindness. The most catastrophic failures in my line of work and in yours are not caused by a lack of knowledge. They are caused by an excess of certainty. They are caused by the filter you mistake for a lens. So here is your new protocol. I want you to stop what you are doing. Pull the file on the last major decision you made this week, the one you felt completely sure about, the one you closed without a second thought. Don't look at your conclusion. Look at the raw data. Look for the single piece of evidence that didn't fit your narrative, the one you dismissed as an anomaly, an outlier. It's there. It's always there. Your only job is to find it. You are not to change your decision. You are not to act on it. You are simply to find the abrasion your confidence erased. Isolate the contradictory fact. Put it under the microscope. Stare at it. That is the only procedure that stops the filter from becoming a wall. Find the artifact. That's the work. So now you understand. The filter I told you about at the beginning isn't a theory. It's a physical object. It's the weight of 10,000 correct diagnoses pressing down on the one that isn't. It's the hum of the fluorescent lights that feels like clarity, but is actually a blinding glare. That young man, Peterson, he didn't have a sharper eye. He just had less light in his way. He hadn't yet learned what to ignore. Experience doesn't teach you what to look for. It teaches you what to stop looking for. It programs you to see the 99 cases that fit the pattern, and it builds a wall of confidence that makes you completely blind to the one that breaks it. That is the system. And that system is always running, silently, right behind your eyes. For the last 8 years of my career, I read every file twice. Once to find the cause of death, and a second time to find the evidence that proved my conclusion wrong. It is the most exhausting and necessary work a man in my position can do. It's the only antidote I ever found. That filter isn't made of time or success. It's made of your own signature, written over and over on the bottom line until you can no longer see the evidence just above it. I still have the corrected death certificate for John Doe 98-142. I look at it every morning, not to remember the case. I look at it to remember the thousands of other names I signed before his, the ones where there was no rookie and no second photograph.